Cool. All right. Hey, people. Yep. Got my glasses. Got my coffee. Let me go ahead and pin something here. It's afternoon, and it is the 11th of July. Let me go ahead and put this together real quick. So, yeah, if I can do that, that would be great. Um, all right. Okay, cool. Can I pin that? Okay. So that's what's being talked about today. Um, it is so hot. Wherever you all are, I'm sure you're probably just as hot as I am because it is burning up. It's like almost in the 90s. You can see I'm really sweating. Okay, we're gonna forget that. We're gonna forget all about the heat. We're gonna forget that it's July and it's hot outside, and we're gonna get started in a second or so. I just have my notes. So, doing things a little similar but different today. So, we're gonna get started, and as you join in, drop in and just say where you're from, like where you watching from, all that good stuff. Okay. So, I just want to welcome you all to CaribbeanScholarTings. Today is July 11th, 2020. I'm your host, Kat J. Stevens, and I'm a full-time PhD student in the nice and friendly field of education. So I study higher education. Um, how did I get here? Let's see. I am a Caribbeanist that happened to fall into education, and through that, CST was started. So it's been a passion, it's been a labor of love. It's been something that I had the idea of when I was an undergrad, started to take shape in my master's program, and has really kind of taken off in my doctoral studies right now. So, hope you can see me. Okay, cool. Yeah. So, thanks for being here. So, before we start, just a regular few housekeeping items as well. As you know, we meet every Saturday from 1 p.m. to 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes we go a little over, depending on the topic and the questions and the flow of conversation. Um, as well, the lives are always going to be saved, so you can go back and watch them after the fact. So if you can watch them when they're happening, great. If you can watch them later, also great. So yeah, so I'm just going to be sharing my thoughts, my ideas, my notes. I would love for folks to interface in the comments, and so as you wish, you can ask questions, you can pop in your comments. I will try my very best to stay on top of them and connect that way. And so, just to remind folks that are watching live and that will also be watching later, Caribbean Scholar Things welcomes all of our island brilliance, okay? So please join the conversation. You do not have to have a degree to join this conversation. So, degreed up or not, this is our birthright. We do reasoning, and reasoning belongs to us, right? So, what are we talking about today? The international student ban. And there's a lot to say here. Why is the topic important, and why are we talking about it today? So, international student ban is something that came up this week that we're in right now, and it's a very important topic for many reasons. Especially with the face of migration, the face of immigration, the face of ICE, the face of these stories having to do with detention and migration, immigration, and people with visas, right? The face tends to be, hi, morning. The face tends to be very different, right, than from our community. And there are some scholars that study migrant studies, immigration stuff. I tend to think about student populations being immigrant and international. And so I wanted to open this up to talk, just to like share my thoughts and share like what I see happening as someone who is in the field of higher education. This is what I study. I have a background in higher ed. I have worked in higher ed. And so this is why I wanted to start this conversation focusing on the Caribbean community today, as usual. So, as normal, my point of view always tends to skew towards Caribbean folks, and so this will be like no other. This will be like every other Saturday, right? So, as we see, this ban has come about this week. If you've been under a rock, you don't know about the ban. But if you're just out and about, you may know about it. But some of us may not have students in our families. Some of us may not have folks that are going to boarding school or to post-secondary institutions. And so this may be a little bit new. So what is this ban? What happened? So just a little bit of the background. And please definitely put any thoughts in the comments and whatever questions you may have as we go along. So I want to say it was Tuesday or so, Monday or Tuesday of the week, and Harvard, for one, announced that the entire university, all of the undergraduate schools, all of the graduate schools, all of the professional schools were going online for the academic year 2020 to 2021. Now, if you know higher ed, if you understand higher ed, if you work in higher ed, if you study higher ed, you'll tend to know and see that there are certain types of university systems that are seen as institutions that will pave a way. So if we see Harvard coming out ahead of the game with such worldwide global brand name recognition, and they're saying that they're going to be going online for the entire academic year, for the entire institution. Other institutions with less recognition may take that as a sign of what the field is doing and the direction that they might want to take their university in. It's a little bit of monkey see, monkey do, for lack of a better phrasing. And so sometimes institutions are kind of hedging. They're still making their plans. Their fiscal years have just started in July for most of the institutions. And so they've got to come up with a plan, and they have to announce a plan. So when you see a school such as Harvard, with its recognition and its name and its cachet, and they're coming straight out the gate and saying that they are going to be shutting down all in-person instruction for the entire academic year, that says a lot. Whether we want them to be a leader, whether we want them to be an institution that other people, morning or afternoon, whether we want them to be an institution that people take follow from or take gains from, it is what it is. People are going to pay attention, and people are going to listen when you have someplace like Harvard University saying that they're completely going online, right? And so morning, and so afternoon. Well, morning for you. But if you have a place like Harvard saying that they're going to go online, a lot of other institutions are going to decide that they're going to go online as well. And so that's one aspect. So Harvard coming out of the gate prompted ICE and the person that inhabits the White House right now. He came out that same afternoon and was interviewed, and he said that it's ridiculous, quote unquote, in his words, that Harvard would come up with such a plan to go completely online for the year. Once he said ridiculous, then ICE came out with their regulations and their plan. And the plan, as you know, directly affects students on F1s or M1 visas. And thinking about our population, thinking about our community, I personally know a ton of international students. I live in an area where my apartment complex is mostly international students. I also live in a college town, so there's that. But when we think about people that come from where we come from in our region, like I was starting to say, the face of international students and the face of immigrants tend to be a brown face, tend to be a Spanish-speaking face, tend to be Latinx, right? So right here, I'm talking about our community. So last year alone in the U.S., there were 1.1 million international students across the globe that come to the U.S. to study. 1.1 million. which is a large number of students, right? And so, since we started talking about Harvard, right? 22% of students at Harvard are international. 22% have F1 or M1 visas, um, as well as NYU, for example. Like I'm from New York. Thinking about NYU, 20% of NYU students are foreign born. This is um, 1/3 of all foreign students, in this case that would be international students, in the United States are Chinese. So definitely like, yeah, I don't know if any of this information is like new to anyone or stuff like that, but it's important to know that the biggest percentage of international students in the United States that study right now in this current moment are from China. What does that have to do with our population? It has to do with a lot. Um, it's also important to know that by ICE trying to force folks' hands and force universities' hands, they then have to now say, they really have to think about, are they going to open up their universities? Are they going to switch their plans around? Are they going to go hybrid? Are they going to stay online and say, we're staying online? We're not going to go ahead and like put our students, our staff, and our faculty in the line of danger. So, in case folks haven't remembered, we're still in a pandemic. We're still in a moment of racial unrest and violence and protest. We're soon headed for economic downturn. I can see it coming. Like I'm wondering what you all see. And so, what they are trying to do by suggesting that that are international students that are international and attend university systems that are going online completely have to be deported, that they want them to be deported, they will deport them, and they will also, or they have to transfer. Now, if you know anything about higher ed, if you've gone to school, if you've gone to post secondary school, if you transferred, transfer is not easy. Most institutions in the US start their fall semester in late to mid August to early September. We're in almost the middle of July. So, a lot of this is not really the season, this is the down season for enrollment folks. I've worked in enrollment management before. I've worked in admissions, college admissions. And so, having that kind of a background, this is down season for admission folks. This is an up season for folks that work in financial aid. But for folks that work in admissions, their cycle is done. They're starting to get prepared for the next academic recruitment cycle. So if what this thing is calling for is for students to apply for transfer to go to institutions that are having in-person or hybrid um, like classes, where are they going to transfer to? How are they going to transfer? Who's going to get up and move in the middle of a pandemic when they already are home, they're already wherever they are? Students that are international have a lot of additional paperwork to do. They have to notify the government, I believe, within 10 days of moving to a new address. Um, there's just so many additional things that go along with being an international student that it places an additional unfair burden on this population of students altogether to now have to think about finding a new institution to go to. If you're a graduate student, if you're a doctoral student, if you're a student getting the highest degree in your field, like for me, I'm a PhD student, and a lot of PhD students have to teach, get to teach, honored to teach, whatever you want to call it. A lot of us teach, and who are we teaching? We're teaching undergraduates. We are in the classroom adjuncting. We're teaching undergraduate students, and so a lot of students' income is tied to them being able to teach in the classroom. A lot of students' income is tied to being a research assistant, to being in somebody's lab, to being supporting a faculty member, to helping them design their syllabus, all of these things. And so I know for me, COVID has impacted me in so many ways, just in my studies alone. I'm not even able to study what I want to study. I was planning on doing a pilot study this past month in the Caribbean region for my work to kind of test, pre-test where I was planning on taking my dissertation topic. I can no longer do that. I can no longer travel to the Caribbean right now. I can no longer go home to like talk to folks and interview people and put my feet on the ground. That's not an option. So I had to try to pivot. What am I going to do instead? Got to find another topic. Got to think of something on the dime, right? And so, with the protections and privileges that I have as a naturalized citizen in the United States, um, there are certain privileges that are afforded to me, right? And so, when I think about my peers that are literally having to worry about how they're going to make their way, a lot of my peers have not gone home. They have not left when it was pandemic time. A lot of my classmates are still here because they don't know if they leave, will they be able to get back in the country? They don't know if they go back to their home country, where will they go? A lot of students are not rich. A lot of international students are not rich. Some are. Some can pay the full $50,000 a year that like Harvard and plus whatever are charging, but some are not. And so when I wanted to think about a conversation like this, I wanted to invite some international students to talk to me, Caribbean international students. And a lot of Caribbean international students were a little too afraid to talk, a little too afraid, understandably so, afraid to put their face on something public and say how this is impacting them. So it's really challenging. So I know for myself, because I have certain privileges, because I did transition from being a person, an international person, foreigner to this country, on a visa, on a specific type of visa, to now being a naturalized citizen of this country. Um, I can speak for them as far as I can based on what I know and what I've experienced. But also, a lot of students are not going to put their story out there because it's really scary, and they feel like there may be blowback for them. So, what I was thinking about was how our university systems in the Caribbean, in particular, um, are going to think about what they may do. Is this an opportunity for institutions in the region to think about how they can capture some of the brain drain that they typically lose when students go and study abroad, come to America, go to Canada, whatever? There is something called brain drain, and if you're not sure what that is, some of you may know what that is, some of you may not know. But brain drain is something very particular to this kind of study, with people moving around in migration studies and such. But essentially, what it means is that there are countries like ours, from our region, that really lose their best, their brightest. Second, okay, that typically lose their best and their brightest to other countries like the U.S. that poach them, that come and take their talent, so take them abroad and pay them to go study elsewhere, pay them to study and then get a job when they finish with their degree, right? So I wonder if, for example, University of West Indies may look at this as an opportunity to invite back some of the students that they could have lost, some of their best and brightest that can help boost the economy, that can help to contribute back to where they're from. That's something I'm thinking about as far as like transfer is concerned. If this new regulation is suggesting that students can transfer, maybe thinking about transferring to one of the University of West Indies institutions might be an idea. There are a handful. A lot of institutions are going online. Of course, they are as well. So that may be something for people in our community to think about. Um, I also am thinking about students just going back to the Caribbean and thinking about studying at UWI. Like, how can they make that happen? How can we make that happen? Um, it is important as well to note that most of the borders, like how this thing is so insidious, how this thing is so crazy. And if y'all have anything to say, please like put it in the what you call it, comments. But this is so insidious, especially because we're in a pandemic that is multifaceted. And so with that, a lot of borders are not even open to folks. And like a lot of folks can't go back home for a lot of reasons. And so what are folks to do? So like I have a good portion of my classmates that are international and that are on a visa. And so I kind of feel funny about just saying these students are international. They're people that are born elsewhere that are coming to study here. So I'm trying to find language that I prefer to use rather than saying they're international because I feel like it kind of others people. But there are my classmates that are on these visas, um, and they did not go home when everything shut down in March. So they're here, right? Not getting paid. There are like certain sanctions on how you can get paid, what kind of job you can do. You can only work, 10 to 15 hours a week if you are a student on one of these visas. Um, you cannot leave. You have to, all your moves have to be marked. You have to be accounted for, everything that you do. And so the people that have stayed, that are still in the US and don't know what they're going to do. Um, there are folks that left and went home and were lucky enough to get a flight when everything started shutting down in March. However, some of my classmates that have now gone back to where they are from cannot come back into this country because there are no flights. Maybe because they can't afford it. Maybe because it's too expensive to travel back. So it's kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Um, it's also very, very, very targeted and very xenophobic for many, many reasons. But I wonder how this will impact black and brown students, particularly those from the region that we're from and that I study a lot of, because we know that the inhabitant of the White House has often talked about this being a very particular illness that is pertinent to one part of the world, right? And so obviously with this like sanction, this person is targeting these individuals because the largest percentage of people that are F1 and M1 visa holders are from China. And, I do think about, and this goes back to everything every week I keep coming back to in my mind and in my heart. Thinking about how do we go back? How do we find a way back to where is home and we can create our own? Because this reliance on what we thought, hey, this reliance on what we thought would work and has worked historically and has been kind of like a steady thing and an understanding is not working right now. And so I continue to like drop these things every week of like, how do we get back to someplace else? And what do we do to encourage the people in our community that are on F1 and M1 visas? How do we encourage them, support them financially? How do we encourage them with their studies? A lot of folks are going to stop their programs. They're going to quit their programs. A lot of folks are not going to be able to continue their studies. A lot of folks want to study like illnesses in the Caribbean. A lot of folks I know want to study disabilities in the Caribbean. A lot of folks want to study, are in the lab trying to go back home and think about cancer research. Like this whole entire international student ban has such far-reaching implications, especially for our regional area, that I'm so concerned for a lot of reasons, just for people, just for like people and being a good person and being a caring person. But also, really, as a researcher in training and as someone that does a lot of work that, in my experience, is already marginalized because I am studying folks from the Caribbean, my work is already hard to get funding for. My work is already hard to get support for. Hi! My work is already hard to get invitations to present my research at. My work is already hard to get people to understand why it's important to study the Caribbean. So what's going to happen to folks that do not have certain protections that I have because I happen to be a naturalized citizen. You know, I am working personally on getting my Guyana passport again, like my Guyana paperwork again. I've been working on it since last year, and I would suggest people start doing what they got to do. I would suggest that folks really start thinking about doing what they got to do to be able to get back home if they need to. And so, in a moment like this, I'm very curious to see what the UE system is going to do, what they're going to say, if they're going to release a statement about country folk from across the Caribbean that are studying in the US, and are they going to condemn the US? Are they going to come down and say, y'all can't treat our people like this and invite them back? Are they going to try to like be really clever and like try to have like a an intra university kind of online exchange for students? This is a time for higher ed to be reshaped. This is the time for higher education to think about doing things very differently and to reimagine what higher education can look like. And the problem with that is, in my experience, there are a smaller percentage of people that want to see higher education reshaped. And there are a larger percent of people that want to see higher ed kept the same. Um, and so, because this is what I study, because when I finish my degree, it's going to be in higher education. Like, my degree is in higher education. My master's degree is in higher education. My doctoral degree will be in higher education. And hey, and I have really strong feelings about how we can use moments of crisis like this to think about pivoting, to think about doing something that will benefit folks that need it the most. And so I really am keeping my eye on this subject. I'm talking with other higher ed people, um, just to see like what our institutions are going to do. What our institutions, people fight so hard to get through all of the grades and everything, take the big exams back home, go through all of this like prep for SAT prep and GRE prep and MCAT prep and um, MAT prep and all this prep to come here and study, and this is what you get when you come here as an international student. Like I just don't know what the payoff is anymore right now. And I don't mean to be like fatalistic about it, but at the same time, I think it's a call to action and it's a call to information. It's a call to really. I'm gonna be looking at UE. I want to see what UWI says. I want to see what University of West Indies is gonna come up with because it's a really good opportunity for them to invite invite people back home to study and to transfer and to make the process simple. Um, and I don't know, maybe that's like a dream in the sky that I have, but I see that when I think about black international folks, black folks with M1 visa, F1 visa, I really think that there's so many issues that are being piled on top of us that a lot of folks don't sometimes see our humanity, that we are part of so many populations that are being targeted right now. If you're thinking about migration, you're thinking about police brutality, you're thinking about COVID, you're thinking about all of it. I don't know. Those are my thoughts right now. Those are my thoughts, and like I said before, I wanted to talk with folks, but um, I know a lot of people were nervous to get on camera, so I'm speaking some things that were shared with me from folks that did not want to get on camera and did not want to talk about their particular experience or what their university is doing. My university is going online, and I don't know what's going to happen. A lot of international students are adjuncts. A lot of international students teach undergrads. A lot of international students are going to just not be able to continue. They're going to drop out, and so I really see this as a moment that 45 and his henchmen are really trying to force hands of universities um, to spur the economy and to jumpstart the economy again. And it's so twisted. It's so sick. Um, so those are my thoughts. Any comments, anything people want to add, any questions, any solutions, anything you're thinking about, this will be the time to pop them in the comments uh, before I close out today. And I'm saying all of this as someone that is an immigrant student to this country, but has become a naturalized citizen of the United States. And if no comments, what I'm gonna do is close things out today. I will see you all next week, same place, same time. I'll try to see if I have an update on this because I'm going to keep my eyes on it, of course. I'm keeping my eye on this thing. It's in my field, it's in my wheelhouse. Um, it's in my backyard, quite literally, where I live at, where I go to school at. It's all the same place. And it's my community in so many ways. And so this very specific, very targeted hit at higher education is on purpose, and I want to know what institutions that claim to care about people right now, they claiming to care about people, what are they gonna do? And maybe it's, time to call, write an email, tweet, ask them, go on their social media, what are you gonna do for Caribbean students studying in the US? Like, what are universities going to do? I don't know. I'm interested in finding out. I will be shooting some letters and some emails out this week myself because I want to know. And I will update you all next week to see what I find. Or maybe I'll update on the social if I find anything in particular that UE has said. Because though UE is a small system, and I'll close out with this. Though they are a smaller system, they're a growing system. It is also a system that has centers being opened up all around the world. UE has centers, learning centers, that are opening up in very interesting places on the globe. That's all I'm going to say about that. You can look that up and see where they're opening their centers, and you can start to think, why are they investing in certain places in the world when brain drain is happening, when United States institutions are taking and poaching the best and the brightest, and then they come here and then they get treated like this? So, UE has updated rankings. Their rankings are very, very high globally for university systems. So UE is making some money. UE's popping, and it's always been popping. But I'm curious where their allegiances lie. And this is, again, the origin and why I keep coming back to these conversations every week of ask the questions, pay attention to things, see what's happening. Because we can hold our stakeholders in our community accountable, and we can ask them to do better. So with that, I will end today's conversation. Thank you for coming. Definitely, I'm going to save the live. Know that this is a space for us. We're reasoning together. Degreed up or not, you belong here. And I thank you for being here. I'll be back next week. See you guys later. Toodles.